Kevin. Like you gotta step it up a little bit.
Pace
All right.
yourself a little. But okay. We're talking about pseudoscience today, right?
Yep.
And my first thought is fitness, but yours was religion?
Yeah, and that's not to call religion a pseudoscience. Let me just make that abundantly clear. But yeah, I think about pseudoscience, and I think more so about the power that we give ideas. So that's kind of like the general direction that I was going with, and I think there's some resilience in that too. So I'll let you kind of take the charge from here. But yes, again, I'm not calling religions a pseudoscience, but I think that they can fall into the category of idea preservation and then idea, like I think it's they're powerful ideas that move people towards a specific goal. So
Definitely. Especially like ideas that like it feels right. A lot of those things are very feel based. And like I think where a lot of things start to get into trouble is where people value what feels right, like feel based things over fact based things. And like there's definitely a space outside of facts for religion, because like the core of most religions is belief on what is beyond the physical realm, sure. But there's many aspects of like religion that ask you to do certain things outside of faith that doesn't seem good. I don't know. We'll touch on it later. I want to start in the easier section first. Let's talk about the physical plane first, and then I want to work our way up to that area because I'm very interested to hear your thoughts about that.
sure, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I wanted to talk. So a lot of people, when people like specifically bring up pseudoscience, it's usually with a negative connotation, bringing up things that like, oh, these are bad because it's not quite science. It is pseudoscience, right? So I wanted to actually start with good pseudoscience, and I have two examples off the top of my head. One, I know that you'll agree because you introduced it to me, and that's ashwagandha.
I did not introduce you to ashwagandha.
You didn't? I thought you did.
I did not.
Oh.
I talked to you about it when you started taking it. I don't take it.
Are you not a fan?
I am not a fan. I'm impartial to ashwagandha. But within that realm, right? Ashwagandha and then other vitamins and stuff that I take. My girlfriend, who's a neuroscience PhD, is quick to shut me down quite a bit. Right? And in that regard, like I'm saying this because what the science shows and tells you, right, is that I don't know what I forget about ashwagandha. I'm not a claim. I think there's actually some like mental effects that ashwagandha gives you. I am not an expert by any means, which is why I'm telling you that this is something we might have talked about, but it's not something I'm very knowledgeable about. So I'm not gonna claim that territory. But I will say, in where I do know knowledge of specifically about supplements in that regard, is that with my girlfriend, and I hope that I'm saying this correctly, and the studies that she has sent me, is that the general consensus is that an uptake of specific vitamins and minerals doesn't necessarily mean absorption, right? So, for example, I take L-tyrosine, I take L-theanine, and I take other stuff like that, right? And you know, I have a diagnosis of ADHD, which usually means a large fluctuation of dopamine, right? So one of the obvious questions that I asked my girlfriend, and specifically her lab, which is a dopamine lab, was, hey, is there a way I can stabilize my dopamine, right? Like specifically when I have low dopamine and I don't want to do anything, is there a way that I can just like have a natural reservoir of dopamine other than stimulants like caffeine or Adderall or any of the other following things? Like, is there anything that I can do? Like taking L-tyrosine, and stuff like that. And what she kind of explained to me was that while there might be a way for you to have a precursor, also, by the way, I know I'm going a little bit off topic here, uh, dopamine, but I also like a lot of the ideas of preserving neuroplasticity as long as possible, right? So there's specific, I'm not sure what you would consider choline. Is that an amino acid? No. Choline is a vitamin?
I'm going to Google it.
Yeah, go ahead and Google it. But choline, for example, is incredibly rich in eggs. And then there's a precursor. I think choline is a precursor to acetylcholine, all of which help a lot with brain functionality and brain development specifically. So I kind of, as someone who's not in the neuroscience field, and I'm more of a hobbyist of anything, I was like, hey, if I take more of this supplement, will I see some beneficial aspects of it? And when I started taking it, I felt smarter, right? I felt more energetic. I felt, all these things that I was, quote unquote, trying to get from these supplements. But then when she explained it to me, she was like, hey, you're probably not getting much out of this, like scientifically speaking. And I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to know the scientific backing, even though I felt whatever it is, because I didn't want to be spending money on something that wasn't really doing something. Because I think specifically the placebo effect only lasts until you're like, wow, what's going on?
I had a similar experience with vitamin E supplementation, but not just vitamin E, the gamma tocopherol variation, which is 3 times the price, by the way. But it's supposed to oxidize your brain, and like as soon as I tell you that, I was like, I feel smarter, like more brain. I'm sure it's the same thing. I'm sure it's 100% placebo. But is that does it matter? Because if I feel smarter, what if that in turn makes me smarter? More like if you believe that you're smarter, you'll be more motivated to like practice chess more and like do puzzles and like seek stimulating conversation, which can then lead to more intelligence. Chicken before the egg, fake it till you make it. Placebo.
Fake it till you make it. But yeah, I think that the idea that you are smarter is a little bit arrogant, right? I don't like to believe that you become like that you are smarter. You can say I think that's only like given to you through like it's like a self-esteem. You develop that notion yourself through a variant of time. I don't think any drug specifically will do that. But if you're saying if you're measuring smartness by your level of absorption of knowledge and general stuff like that, then yeah, I can see how you can say it that way. And that's actually what I was aiming for, right? I wanted to be smarter. I wanted to be more focused and more I wanted to have more agency in the stuff that I was doing. So basically the consensus was just because you're having more of something, a hormone in your brain or whatever it may be, it doesn't mean that you're going to have the receptors to actually accept all that extra stuff. So
yeah, my favorite example of that is you ever take a vitamin B supplement?
Yeah.
And you just piss Gatorade. Like it just all goes through you, right? It's like 6 grams of vitamin B. You can't absorb 90% of that. So like most of it just like, yeah, goes straight through your system. Many nutrients I'm sure are very much the same, especially supplementation.
Yeah. So I mean, look, in this regard, again, neuropharmacology is incredibly complex. And nootropics has become a super big thing in the fitness industry. It's become a super big thing just like in the academic industry as well. Just like as a college student, like the amount of people that we knew that were trying to get Adderall, that weren't prescribed it, that, they were trying to get whatever. And mushrooms have become a massive market right now. Lion's mane and other stuff like that. Like I can, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, you can go to Whole Foods right now. And there's a whole aisle directly dedicated to mushroom supplementation. And do we really know what's going on with that? Not really. No. How backed are these studies? They're not even FDA regulated. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that they don't work. That's just to say that there's not enough research to actually show anything just yet.
Exactly. And that's a point that I want to talk about a lot with pseudoscience, is that like a lot of what makes pseudoscience is that there's been just enough testing to like create hype and create like a demand for certain like supplementation. Like, oh, hey, this improved longevity in mice. Like, you want to try it? It might do the same for you. But like, there isn't enough research yet to kind of support it. So like, even if like in the future, like 10, 20, 15 years into the future, where like maybe we do find out that, yeah, this supplement does work, but for now we don't know if it does. So it's a gamble. So like, we don't know. 99% of the time, usually it's kind of like, no, it doesn't do anything. But everyone's just banking on that 1% and are willing to spend money on that gamble of like, oh, it might.
Yeah, and like sometimes I even just say, you know what, screw it. Like $5 on the drain for the possibility of learning, is it's worth. I think sometimes it's worth the experimentation. I think that's a lot of what we do. But really, what the research shows that, and the one placebo effect that I will continue to feel, and if it's probably not even placebo because it's heavily researched, is exercise, right? Like, exercise is the only thing that really tends to actually even continue to slow down, I guess, neurodegeneration, or maybe upkeep neuroplasticity a little bit longer, or keep it fresher. Because when you hit 30, there's there's a cognitive decline, and really, there's these other factors, but I don't know. I think humans are constantly looking for things to expand their mind and to just have like the effects of hard work. I guess, and that's, I have a hard time with this aspect of pseudoscience. I think it's a little predatory sometimes. I think it's giving people false hope. But I don't always think that false hope is bad. Right?
That's true. Hope is a good thing. Who cares if it costs $20, $50, right?
Yeah, I think there's a cost benefit analysis that should be done with anything of any of this. Like, if you cost some people, like, I'm not saying this is obviously not true, but if meditation was found out to be pseudoscience, like, what is it really costing them? Like 5 minutes of breathing? Sure, like that. I think that's fair. It's a good risk. You're not really costing people that many things. If anything, people are getting some quiet time, like whatever. And then in which case you're still just getting some benefits. So, I think it's
it's more like the most egregious like examples that I can think of are like I saw someone like walking around a gym with like a thing wrapped around their stomach to like help them sweat the fat out of their stomach. Your opinions are the same as mine, right? That's not.
Yeah, you can't target fat loss. That's it's not doing anything. You're probably just a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, if you're uncomfortable, that thing probably costs like $20, $30.
Yeah.
So it's a cost. It's risk reward, right? Cost benefit. That one, you got to weigh the cost. Cost $20, $30. Benefit probably zero. So weighing, not great.
Yeah, but you know what? It's not a long term. Like, for most people, $20, $30, within however long, it's not gonna really be the end of the world for them. If that makes them more confident to go to the gym and say, "Hey, I'm actually making," it's partially because of this thing. Then I actually think it's worth the $20, $30. Go ahead and be motivated. I'm not gonna shoot that down.
I agree with you, but the patterns I see of the people who are choosing to try trendy things like this is generally, I get the vibe that they're doing it as a shortcut. And that's where I think it's like where it's trouble. Like, instead of walking longer, instead of eating healthier, instead of doing those things, like, oh, instead of working, I can just put $20 down and I can buy this accessory that'll do it for me. So it's a shortcut saving on work.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's an issue.
it's, I think eventually what's cool about these things, right, is that eventually I do think that you will reach a point and you're saying, wow, this is doing it for me. Right. So I think through trial and error, which is like, I think that pseudoscience in itself has a level of science, which is experimentation within the individual. And I think anybody who's trying to improve themselves in any which way, if they buy a product, should be monitoring their progress in some form or shape or way, how they feel, how they look, blah. So
they should be.
If there's a trend in a positive direction, right? Like, if you're obese and you get that little thing that you were talking about, and it's like I told you, it's getting you walking, it's getting you whatever, and because you think it's accelerating your gains or whatever, you're accelerating. I don't think it's harmful. I think it's actually a pretty good thing. I think it's it's a waste of material, sure, but
and honestly, this kind of goes back to our last talk on positivity, which is that even in the most negative things, you can find positive things, which I love that about you, which is that, and I even prefaced it, which is these waist trainers are just that. They are a waste. But as you just point out, I know, right? As you just point out, there is positive that you can totally take from it, and it can be a very positive thing. Anything can.
Yeah, man. I mean, this comes into superstitions place too. I mean, athletes do it all the time. They wear specific socks, they wear specific shoes, or whatever the hell. It's superstition, which I think is incredibly laced within within pseudoscience.
Well, actually, if you've read Atomic Habits, which I'm pretty sure you have, those are rituals, which actually helps you get into a flow state, which actually does improve performance.
Exactly. So who's to say that these things aren't working, right? So it's and this is where the placebo effect really comes into play, right? Because you believe that these things are going to happen and they end up happening, then it's a confirmation bias and a feedback loop that it's going to be hard for you to escape. And I actually argue that you shouldn't really mess with it, right? If something's working for you, why break it? If it's not broken, don't fix it, right? Mm-hmm. Only when you start to see harm is when I think you should start seeing, for example, if you make $1,000 every 2 weeks, right, and you're spending $300 in supplements, that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
I think that you should.
It's a cost benefit analysis. Even if you are only spending $100 on supplements that probably don't work per month, that's $100 that could go to something else.
Yeah, I mean, just even trying to take a course, something might benefit you a little bit better within that use. And I think this is where people like Andrew Huberman actually have been gotten into. He pushes a lot of stuff, not from any specific brand. And I mean, I'm going to say this, I'm a Huberman fan. I am. I think he provides a lot of practical knowledge, but within the neuroscience community, he sometimes is frowned upon between pushing these supplements about saying, hey, I take all these things. I mean, he's sharing his own protocols, which I think, some of these things say, hey, there's a premise that states I have seen some benefits, or I have seen and some of these studies with a small sample group have seen benefits. But I think that also depends a lot about an individual biology, and pseudoscience comes into play as well in the gym, right? From that, right? So let me wrap this around. You might have to cut this.
We don't edit here. We're keeping 100% real, uncut.
Okay, yeah. Well, let me not blabber on. But basically, what I was trying to say with Andrew Huberman specifically is that these pseudoscience aspects can, once you start to kind of spread the word of them, hey, I do this and it helps me out, it can become harmful because some people are going to take it to an extreme because they want direction. And yes, I think that's a little hard.
I agree that can be harmful, which is there's two main arguments, two main points that I did want to bring up on that point, which is that adults should think for themselves, right? It is the responsibility of adults to think for themselves. When they hear a suggestion, oh, this supplement works for that person, they go back and reflect, is this right for me? That is the individual's responsibility. But I think that where there is an issue with people spreading maybe some pseudoscience is for those who are vulnerable, right? The young who may not have as much life experience to understand, like, oh, is this right for me? Should I trust this person? Like, is this person just trying to make money off of me? Like, they don't have that experience to like make an informed decision. Or people with limited access to the internet or some things. I know, like, as someone whose girlfriend was homeschooled, and so her access to
Yeah.
I love Rachel. She's great. She's very intelligent, but like there's some gaps in her worldview. So like there is blind spots where they could be vulnerable. Like people could be vulnerable to being preyed upon by, especially people who want to make money off of them.
Yeah. And, I don't really blame those people, right? I feel like, and the main reason I don't blame those people is because there's a very strong emotional, direction that is played upon that, right? So marketing has evolved tremendously, right? Like, I mean, if you read Atomic Habits, you also know about the Febreze study, right? Or the Febreze marketing campaign, which, for those who don't know, essentially Febreze was doing terrible, even though it was quote unquote working. Right, like it was neutralizing odors, and people were finally like kind of dealing with some bad smells in a very, I guess, productive way. But people weren't using it, so they kind of had to play to the users' emotions or habits and cues in order to get people to use it. So they ended up launching a commercial where the whole place was cleaned, and then at the end they sprayed the Febreze bottle, and then that apparently kind of triggered a routine cue and reward cycle within users to start buying Febreze.
Yeah, because it made the user like, oh, they're associating Febreze with it feeling clean, and so exactly. It feels clean, it feels right, it feels very satisfying. With that cue.
It wasn't anything to do with the efficacy, but more so just a feeling. And I think specific green powders and supplements like that, if you really look at what they sell, they're selling you like 60% of spirulina. Everything else is like very minuscule. So if you're not getting much of anything, like, and you're just feeling healthy, and I think that's what you're kind of playing into. You see all these healthy people doing it, and it's really just like creating an image where you can place yourself in there, but you're not really getting much gain out of it.
So I think that is a problem, because they're replacing actually being healthy with feeling like they're being healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so pseudoscience as a whole, I'm not sure is incredibly harmful. I think I definitely have some things that I do out of pseudoscience that I believe help me out.
Yes. Such as?
Shoot.
I have some examples. So there's the ashwagandha that we talked about, which I swear by. It could vary, and so I will defend it. I don't have any science to back it up, but my anecdotal experience is very strong, and so I will use it, and it feels right for me, because like I just have a notification on my phone of like when to like start taking it and when to stop taking it, like when to cycle on, when to cycle off, and like I'll just like stop taking it, and then like a few days later, like I will notice that like I am more anxious, like just like my normal just like level of stress like throughout the day is higher, and then like I'll be like, why am I like so stressed? Like why am I feeling anxious? And then I'm like, oh, I'm on a break. So like I think that that's evidence, but again, it's still only anecdotal evidence.
Sure. I mean, as long as you're not really promoting it without really like looking into it, and I think you're taking that risk factor within yourself, and you acknowledge that it's possibly pseudoscience, but it's just for you. You're not telling me, hey, Augustine, you should take this. Like I don't think you've ever.
I tell everyone they should take ashwagandha. Anyone I know who's like a little stressed, which is basically everyone I know, I'm like, y'all should take this.
Well, Kev, I disagree with you. I don't think that's a good idea to do, especially if, you should probably read into it a little. I think
I say people should try it. If they don't like it,
Sure.
then don't continue.
It's funny because I think you're one of the first people that has actually introduced me to kind of steering away everything from just being science. And I remember this being very I mean, you were obviously a mentor for me in the gym for a while, right? And you had a lot of different expertise that I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And one of those things where you weren't really taking into account all the science that was out there about lifting. You actually used to follow some of the guidance from the greats, Arnold, and I don't know why all of them are
Frank Zane,
yeah,
my all-time favorite.
And you were kind of just saying like, hey, yeah, I mean, look, you got to kind of take it piece by piece. Some of these guys have been training and it's for them. So like working towards failure is optimal for this person. Some people amazing physique. So it's not all about the science. It's about, testing these things out and having a feeling. And I think part of that, right, doing the crazy amount of drop sets that you love doing at the time. I think your training method has changed a little bit, but I was very surprised to see that because you're definitely one of the people that had the most like developed physiques at that gym or in general that I've ever met. I mean, you won the floor of the natural over there?
It was a very small competition, sure.
Okay, well, you still won a competition. Like you were, to me, in my eyes at the time, like, and still kind of, right, a very experienced individual in the gym, one with accolades, and one of the most effective trainers that I've had. Because effectively, I mean, I saw results too. Yeah.
Yeah, I just try to learn from every single source that I can learn about. Like what works for that person, what works for that. I will even stop people at the gym. I even stopped this huge dude at the gym the other day, and I was like, "Hey, I see you throwing around like these like deadlifting like 4 places. Like, hey man, tell me what works for you. Like, why are you doing this? What's your set count? Like things like that." And I could tell I was bothering him, but I kept asking him. I was like, "I want to know." And then eventually he was like, "I got to get back to my workout." And I was like, "Okay." But you want to learn, like, because everyone can teach you anything, but like, so like take Mike Mentzer. Mike Mentzer is a classic era bodybuilder. He only worked out, I want to say, like 3 times a week with like ridiculously low volume, like 10 sets per workout, like 3 times a week. That is very low. He was of course like doing a lot of compounds, sure, but that's what worked for him, and he had a great physique. He's mostly known for like being a really like smooth poser, like just being like really good at showing off the muscle, but he had a very good physique as well, so that worked for him. That's like the complete opposite of Arnold, who is spending 3 hours a day in the morning, 3 hours a day in the evening, like 6 days a week. Like complete opposite ends of the spectrum, but both have good physiques. So what can you learn from that? Even though they're doing opposite things, clearly there's something that works. Yeah.
And so that's when I think I started to deviate and kind of go into that realm of experimentation within pseudoscience, right? And I mean, pseudoscience, like, I don't know, you can look at it from astrology to, this is where my religion kind of thought process kind of came through. And, all these other aspects. I think humans, I know humans are pattern seekers. We want to see patterns. And I think all these things I think what pseudoscience is for the main part, unless it's a scam, objectively a scam, it's a hypothesis, right? That just needs to be tested a little bit more. And I think a lot of time, what's up?
I was just gonna say, yeah, it's seeking answers, like it's like, why are we here? Seeking meaning. And so like there's some evidence that feels right. And honestly, that's the start of science, right? It's a form of a hypothesis, and then it's just a matter of going through the scientific method and keeping what does seem to fit all of the puzzle pieces and throwing away what doesn't fit the rest of the puzzle pieces.
Yeah, no, it's so yeah, and that's the aspect that I think is the most important about pseudoscience. That if you are going to follow any realm, there is that you're going to have to make adaptations to this, right? You're going to have to test it through different
Should.
boundaries. You should. No, I mean, you know what? I'm going to say you have to. Okay,
People
because
don't. People are
well,
stubborn.
people don't. Well, people do drugs and other stuff that they shouldn't be doing, and they should do. They have to do specific things to be a healthy individual. I think
But
there
they
are
don't have to
specific.
be a healthy individual.
They don't have to be.
They should be a healthy individual.
Oh man, that's so
Well,
hard for
my
me.
opinion. You don't have to do anything. You don't.
Yeah, you know what, man? I don't judge many people, but I do judge people who don't care very much about their own physical health. And not in the sense that they don't actually enact into it, but like those people who just like have given up. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like you gotta like unless you're like because anybody who wants help and like nobody's gonna make fun of the fat person at the gym. Nobody's gonna make fun of the drug addicted person in rehab. It's like these people are all trying to do something better. There's no judgment there. What there is judgment in is I don't care that this is bad for me. Like I think about this specifically with cigarette smokers, and specifically those that smoke around other people, without the consciousness of like, hey, like Kevin, I'm sorry to bring it back. Do you remember our neighbors?
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Used to smoke right outside of our front door.
and we had like we were living in terrible apartments that had no insulation at all.
Yeah, so it would go
Um,
straight through the cracks in the door.
you could see the smoke coming in. And
Smelt in the kitchen.
I felt like that was a very like it was just very not conscious of them, and
Very
they didn't seem to care.
inconsiderate.
Yeah, very inconsiderate. They had kids around. They were smoking around them. Like I think those people, because like there's no way at this point in life, and like specifically in the United States, do you not know that smoking cigarettes is bad for you and it's bad for others? Deny the evidence that's there, and hopefully, right? Like I hope that they truly believe that smoking wasn't terrible for their kids, because
Uh-huh.
you know.
Well, that's not pseudoscience. That's just apathy. You know, they probably don't
Uh,
disagree with you. They're probably not like, oh, this cigarette, oh, it's not bad for me. It's probably like, oh, I know it's bad for me. You know,
bad for them. Bad for them and their kids.
it's just
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I think this is where pseudoscience and whatever, like the Lord will save me or blah blah blah. Like relying on something else other than as well as your own actions is where it gets a little bit messy. People who only I think even in the Bible there's a story about believing in God and believing in his grace, but also not taking action within yourself. Right. I'm terrible at quoting the Bible, but basically, the general story goes: there's a man drowned. God sends a branch, a boat, and other stuff, and he just kept asking God, "Please help me, please help me," and he ends up drowning. And so when he's having, he's like, "Why didn't you help me?" He's like, "Well, didn't you see everything else? Why couldn't with the help that I needed? You got to take an action within your own part, and not just hope that whatever supplements you're taking, whatever thing that you're doing is just gonna be benefiting you."
yeah, like do the work for you, right? That drowning man was expecting God save me for me, just lift me out of the water. No, it doesn't work
Yeah.
like that. Like magic supplement, make me healthy. Doesn't work like that, right? The saying is God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly right. And you see that happen continuously, right? Like, sure, like if you fall within we're because we started out on the in the physical side and then specifically in the health side. I think about it. Sure, you're taking ashwagandha. Sure, I'm taking things about like I'm taking L-tiers to help my focus, but I'm also trying to meditate. I'm also
Wait,
trying
are you talking
to
about L-theanine?
no
Oh,
L-tyrosine.
I just happen to
L-theanine
have
is
that on me.
L-theanine. I like it. Natural compound found in like green tea and stuff like that. It helps calm. And okay, that one I haven't wanted to ask my girlfriend about it. I don't want to know. That one, for
I
example,
don't want her to spoil it for me with her science.
for fucking science. Yeah, I want to know that I like that one feels good. I do feel like when I have a lot of coffee and I get jittery, I take a little bit of L-theanine. It doesn't make me as jittery. I find that if I drink a shit ton of green tea, I'm not gonna feel jittery. L-theanine is found in green tea. That's good. That's a logical gap that I'm gonna make.
If it works for me, it works for me, you know? It's not that expensive. You're still getting the benefit, right? At the end of the day, you're still feeling like focused and you're still getting the benefit. It's just going back to like the weight trainer, they're not getting the benefit. It's not making them lose any weight. They might hopefully be getting other things, like they might get more confidence, maybe some more motivation to get in the gym, but those are side benefits. They're not actually getting the direct benefit they were trying to get, they were intending to get.
Yeah, and these peripheral benefits that I mean, for lack of a better word right now, I guess it's just like I think that's really what pseudoscience is really giving us, right? Whether it's direction, whether it's a feeling, whether it's whatever, I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing to try. These holistic medicines, like as long as it only becomes dangerous when you start to see a decline or you're not really monitoring your body enough. And I don't know. It's a really, I mean, I'm sure in the health field specifically, this is talked about all the time with holistic medicine coming up and out, like being like an alternative remedy for even cancers, right? Like you start to think, well, you know, it's their body, it's their choice. But at the same time, like if you start to push that upon their kid, like that's when it gets a little tricky. I say a combination of these things as well with like actual monitoring, and you take into place not just like a feeling. That's when I would intervene myself and say, hey, I have cancer or whatever the hell. I'm trying to treat this with whole foods, with walking, with hydration, with I don't know, veganism, whatever it may be that you're trying to cure your cancer. But at the same time, I'm gonna go to a doctor who's gonna tell me, hey,
Do it
your tumor.
all. Do all the
Yeah,
things, right?
do all the things, man. Eliminate after things that make you feel bad, and that's good. But like
Don't choose pseudoscience over science. Maybe.
over science,
Yeah.
beautiful,
How about
beautifully
science
put.
and pseudoscience? Hedge your bets. Why not?
Yeah,
As long as they're not in conflict with the science. I'd say prioritize the science.
prioritize the science. Yeah, as long as it doesn't. Right? Like I don't
Like
know.
if your pseudoscience says like don't do chemotherapy and your doctor's like saying do chemotherapy, like maybe do the chemotherapy. Maybe listen to the doctor. Or I don't know.
Yeah, to each their own. At the very least, just don't push on your ideals into someone else. And I think that's
Yeah. Don't encourage your friend with cancer to not listen to their doctor.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you say, hey, look, I read that this is a good thing. But
You know, have you tried like yeah, chemotherapy has been shown to help with cancer, but have you tried eating a pound of walnuts?
oh,
It's a whole food. It's organic. Those are
look at your
chemicals they're
brain.
trying to pump in your veins. So which do you want? Organic nuts that come from a tree or chemicals that if you drink would kill you?
Yeah, and you see right there, you're really playing into that into that emotional state, man. So, uh, but okay, I think we talked about pseudoscience in a way that has peripheral benefits And I think that's like the main benefits of pseudoscience, if you ask me. And I think that, you know, we've also talked about how it can be harmful. I will say, I think that scientists have an issue here, right? And I think the issue at hand is that they're not looking at these things objectively all the time. By that, what I mean is that there's an idea that the spiritual is completely separate from science, right? And I think that, you know, maybe if you look back like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they would have told you, the only people telling you to meditate would have been the Buddha, right? Or like the Hindu, or, and I think that now that we know the benefits of meditation and we know the benefits of these things because scientists have tested it, you can say, hey, you know what? Like, these religious figures that were telling you to do these things for a while were actually onto something. And I mean, you can say the same thing about Judaism and being kosher, right? Like, for a while, like, they were the people surviving plagues. They were the people because they were washing their plates in a specific manner. They were following hygienic patterns, and they were using it as a bias to confirm their belief in their God. But at the same time,
God was saving me from the plague, when in reality, God was just telling them to clean their plates and avoid germs.
yeah, avoid germs. Don't eat this filthy animal that we didn't have the cleaning process for before. You know, and I think that, you know, stuff like that should be looked into. Anything that said, hey, look, this is helping me, whether it's because of a belief of whatever. I think that science and religion can go hand in hand. I mean, there's a whole book on the neuroscience of Buddhism. Yes. And
I have it somewhere.
Yeah, and I think like there's probably a lot of different factors. I mean, hell, I would even say that the astrology could probably have some patterns there, you know, like, who knows?
Maybe.
Not to tell you.
I don't think we should be testing that first. I think there's some other places that we can look for first. Yeah, this book. I love this book.
Yeah, it's very good. That one explains a lot of fundamentals in neuroscience, and it's really cool. So I think that, you know, I think as critical thinkers that we should be looking at what's happening around us. We should be looking at what people are saying, whether the delivery of the method isn't great, or it's like posed as a religious or maybe self-absorbed like message. But at the end of the day, there it could be some benefits there that are worth looking into. And as much as the guy, you know, who's telling you that you should take lion's mane mushroom every day, or you know, magic mushrooms or LSD is helping them out, like, I'm not going to tell you to do that, but hey, we should get on to some testing here. We should look to see if what they're saying is valid, because, you know, to believe that you know more than everybody else is, I think, the biggest harm you can do. And you should be trustful and you shouldn't waste your time. Yeah. But I think that humans are meant to explore the natural world and leverage it. So these are things that you know, it's hard to say that everything's bad that we do with pseudoscience. What's one thing that you can think of like that is a truly negative experience of pseudoscience that you've encountered?
Truly negative pseudoscience. Let's see. Most of the pseudoscience that like I have like identified as pseudoscience is mostly just like stuff that doesn't work. So like testosterone boosters don't really do anything. Like the general consensus is that they don't really increase or decrease male testosterone a meaningful amount. That's just kind of neutral. People avoiding gluten. Unless you have celiac disease, you can have gluten. It's not going to do anything to you. But again, that one's kind of neutral, because like if you're avoiding gluten, then you're just not having gluten. So again, neutral.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess
some of these fad diets for sure. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting one, like the keto diet and stuff like that. Like if you strip down carbs, it's also shown to, show that it gives you incredibly bad breath and lower cognitive function for a while. So
The brain runs on glucose.
so you know, yeah, there's so many of these things, and this. I'm gonna be the first to tell you that I don't even know if we can fully always trust the science, but I'd rather trust something that is backed and studied over and over again than something that is coming up brand new, you know?
I will also
Call me,
trust something that is not trying to make money off of me.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, trust people who tell you to drink more water. That's free for everybody.
I tell it to people in Africa.
Oh, yeah. Big water, man.
But I think going back to what you're talking about with this people trying to push pseudoscience on others. So like another example I can think of is like people forcing veganism on like their dogs.
Yeah.
I think that's horrible. Poor dogs.
Oh,
Man's best friend.
yeah. I have a friend who works at the at a major dog food company, and he's telling me that a lot of dog food like meals that they give, they market it towards humans, like what they think humans will believe is healthy for them, so it's going to be healthy for their dog.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily tailored for their dog, it's tailored for humans so they can buy it because they think it's healthy.
Uh-huh.
But to the dog they're not getting.
It's true. I see like beef stew with like some peas in it. I was like, I don't know if my dog really needs like peas and carrots. Sounds good to me, but
I mean, like cat food is higher in protein than dog food, for example. Cats need more protein than they do anything else. They're primarily carnivorous. So like,
I mean, so are dogs, but
yeah, just because they can eat other things doesn't mean that should be the main point of the diet.
yes.
Yeah.
But as far as like pseudoscience like really harming people, I think the most harm comes from following said pseudoscience instead of science, such as like seeking real medical attention, like just doing healing crystals or eating 10 pounds of walnuts because it's got antioxidants instead of like getting like insulin if you're like diabetic, like natural ways to raise insulin. Like if you're diabetic, go to your doctor, get some insulin. That's the treatment.
So I think a lot of people, I mean, I think also pseudoscience has become a symptom of distrusting the general healthcare system that we have. And I can't say that I blame them completely. Like there was that national study where they put Cheerios as being healthier as red meat, right? That was like a year ago, 2 years ago. Yeah, and this was actually published by the American Heart Association. And so these are guidelines. Oh, sorry, American Health Association. These are guidelines for people to follow, and they had like a ranking list. And you're like, wow, huh? I mean, I can maybe rationalize it, right? You can say saturated fat could be generally bad for people. I don't know what our average like. There's a lot of factors that can play into this that I don't really know about. So it's not like I'm going to really attack that study, but overall, I would never give the advice to someone who's trying to be healthier. Hey, you should eat more Cheerios, right? Like, and avoid meat altogether. I'd say, hey, look for lean meats, like, look for high fiber stuff. And
like just say some like such a broad general claim. I think I just try to avoid those at all costs. Like Cheerios is healthier than red meat. Based on what metric? Yeah. Like one's a carb, one's a protein. I need both. Like what type of cut is it? Like is it a lean cut? Are we talking about like burgers? Are we talking about like a New York strip? I'm trying to think of like lean cuts of beef. Filet mignon. I don't know. Like gotta have my filet mignon now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's all these different types of studies, and the fact of the matter is, like, one thing that I want to help like focus on, and I think a lot of Americans do too, is right. And I'm like, rather than just lifespan, I think that we've reached a level where we can be medicated for multiple like decades of our lives, towards the end of our lives, and that doesn't necessarily we're living good lives. I mean, they used to think that fucking cigarettes were healthy. Sorry for the, I've been dropping a lot of F-bombs, but they used to drink the cigarettes were healthy, and the cough was actually bad toxin in your lungs.
Well, who was saying that cigarettes were healthy? I think it was the cigarette makers.
Right, but I mean, nobody. This wasn't checked, and I think a large part of this is that when you have enough money, and then like in the United States, when we have ability to lobby the way that we do, we're gonna have a lot of um, industry motives to push certain things, right? Like,
Because it was the cigarette makers who were actually paying scientists to kind of, hey, make a study that kind of comes to the conclusion that cigarettes are fine for you, right?
exactly. And I think that when you start to see those things and you say, hey, my grandma like used to smoke 3 packs a day because she was a healthy, but then she died when she was, I mean, or however old grandmas are. So I'm not 45, my our age, like 85, 75, I don't know, 65. 65, I think is a little, I'm going to put 65. Um, then I think at that point it would be a hard ball for me to start trusting the government and start trusting the science, right? Because this is where I think we have to begin to become critical thinkers and not just follow what we're told. It's
Well, in the case of the cigarettes, it wasn't the government; it was the scientists who were being paid by the cigarette, by big tobacco.
yeah, but even acknowledgement of that fact, right, would then make people like, I don't know about you, but when I read when I read anything nutrition wise that's promoting any specific supplement, that's just promoting any specific protocol, that would maybe have to like for example that American Health study, I should really look into if Kellogg's is like is funding any of these studies, or where are they getting this money from? Um, so, and teaching people to question things healthily is, I think, the only way to really uh, get past this claim of, whether pseudoscience is going to be harmful or not. Because at this rate, we're learning a lot that what we're generally informed about in health has been incorrect, right? Like, um, what I mean by that is that, right, in the beginning of medicine, when we had doctors and we had a high mortality, there were like autopsies, right, within tables that then were being used for surgery. We didn't really know about bacteria back then, but as we grew more knowledge, we had different protocols to adaptations, right? So before we had a mortality rate because we were unhygienic, we did, so people were getting infections and dying, and then afterwards,
Sorry, you keep cutting in and out a little bit. Is there any way you can mess with your microphone a little?
it's an internal mic, so maybe I'm talking too fast. How's this?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'll talk slower and maybe, yeah. So all I'm saying is that there is a disparity between what we believe is true at the moment, right? And then what is the actual truth. And so over time, some of these protocols that people develop within their own accord that we call pseudoscience then be backed by science. And that the science that we currently had was, so I think this is why we can't really rule anything out truly.
Yeah.
But I think that pseudoscience currently has been used as a to traditional health norms simply because the American public specifically has had a big distrust in what we've been told is healthy. Like right now, there's a big war on seed oils.
Well, no one should really have seed oils anyway.
I mean, you say that, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but you talk to any dietitian, and they're going to tell you that a small amount of seed oils isn't harmful for you.
Yeah,
and
a small amount's fine.
The way I see it is, seed oils aren't bad for me. Great. But you know what's also not bad for me? Avocado oil. So, and nobody's like questioning avocado oil right now. So let me, go towards that.
Have the better one. I myself only ever have avocado oil or olive oil. I would also add coconut oil, but I'm allergic, so just the two.
Well, there you go. So it's, but like I said, there's a general consensus that actually seed oils within scientific studies that seed oils are not that bad for you. They are not bad for you, period. That only because we go to these restaurants, everything that we're eating in oil, that they're bad for you. However, the new wave of holistic medicine is telling you seed oils are the enemy. They're one of the number one causing things for cancer.
Number one, really?
Well, I mean, not number one. I'm exaggerating
here. Well, I
wouldn't
be surprised if people were claiming that, because people claim crazy things all the time.
Yeah.
It's just people taking things to the extremes too much. Just like, hey, everything in moderation, balance. Like, don't only eat out. Have seed oils a bit. Like, yeah. Okay, to me, if I was going to vilify like any food, it would be like butter, right? To me, that's like the worst things for you, like of any reasonable food. Like obviously soda, or fine, I'll say soda. Okay, how about soda? There's nothing good about soda. Soda's only bad for you. If I were to rank it on a tier list, it would be an F tier. There's nothing good remotely for you. It is 100% bad, causes diabetes, causes health problems. It's expensive. Like, what's the profit margins on soda? It's like 90%.
It's something. It's mainly water, and then all the bad shit you can put into something. Yeah,
there's like a little bit of syrup that's just like carcinogenic. Yeah. Anyway,
sprinkle some cancer in there. It tastes better.
Don't want diet soda. It's got a little bit less of the cancer. Oh wait, no, it probably has more of the cancer stuff. Anyway,
better for yeah.
So like even that, if I were to vilify one thing, I guess it would probably be soda. But even then, if you had it just like a little bit in moderation, to me that would be like once every other week. Sure, twice a month. You'd probably be fine. Yeah. So just like have things in moderation. You can't just. I don't believe in just cutting things out, like zero seed oil, zero soda. If you like soda, have soda every once in a while. I mean, I would encourage you to find a healthy alternative, such as like LaCroix, or something like that. That like maybe like scratches the itch. It's of course not going to be quite as good as like an ice cold favorite soda, sure, but like it scratches the itch and it's far healthier. I'd put LaCroix in A tier for health. Where would you put LaCroix? It's just water.
I don't know. There's probably some other things that within packaging and whatever that is probably not the healthiest. But then again, right now I'm going through a moment of what exactly isn't going to kill you. There's an overwhelming.
You're going to die, so everything's going to kill you. Yeah, you're not trying to prevent it.
The tap water is killing me. Sunlight's killing me. Not getting enough sunlight's killing me. So LaCroix, dude. I mean, it's not soda. It's not. Is it as healthy as eating broccoli? Probably not.
Well, so you're not substituting LaCroix with broccoli or vice versa. You're substituting LaCroix for soda, right? You have certain needs as a person, and so like when you have a need, you have more than one choice for it. So like for steak versus Cheerios, like I'm not gonna have like steak for breakfast. Usually, it's gonna be cereal. So it's either Cheerios versus Wheaties or whatever. And then for dinner, it's going to be steak versus chicken or whatever. Like, you have a need, fill it with something that's appropriate. So, like, that study that compared Cheerios to steak, I was like,
Well, they're just I. So this is where I should have prepared a little bit more here. But I didn't know about. I mean, so I'm not sure if it was in terms of specifically heart health here, which I think is in a direct comparison point. But I think there's a metric that I don't know. I think that it's a little hard for us to just say that something is like you're saying, like that there's something that's directly just terrible for you. And when it comes to pseudoscience, it's these are things that I think pseudoscience. The biggest difference between actual science and pseudoscience,
is what you
but
cut out.
something that is known to be tested.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like when does it become scientific? It's when it's tested, when it's quote unquote proven, when we know what the effects are. So
Yeah, so I think pseudoscience is in two categories, which is one, it's on the way to becoming science, which is
Sure.
my favorite. Sorry, I've told you this, which is like aspirin before we like figured out like the chemical and distilled the chemical that makes aspirin in like the 60s or something like that. Before, for thousands of years, we just used to like boil willow bark, and that would reduce fever, and it would be a pain reliever. It wasn't until the 60s that we turned it in that pseudoscience. People are like, hey, you hear about this bark? I feel better when I boil it. It lowers my fever. That was pseudoscience of some bark off a freaking tree. And they're like, yeah, sure, that's better, right? That's pseudoscience until the 60s, where they're like, oh no, this chemical, when we distill this chemical out of it and you take it, it reduces your fever. Then it's science.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah. I mean,
that's the first pseudoscience, which is it's on its way to science. But then the second one is like it takes like a nugget of science and just like blows it out of proportion and like makes wild claims. Like
yeah, jumping to conclusions is the big problem that we have. Yeah.
yes. So I feel like most like I feel like a lot of what you've been brought up today, which is like don't count out the pseudoscience that is being tested, such as whatever the lion's mane. I don't know anything about lion's mane. It's are you not? No.
I mean, I don't know. Does it? You know what? Lion's mane mushrooms taste really good to me. if from a matter of taste and nutritional standpoint, I think hey, dude, I love it.
Yeah.
Like, but do I know if it's like amazing for me? I
We don't
know.
know yet, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's some studies here and there, but so is it good for me? I have no idea. And I think that it's okay for me not to know, and I think it's okay for us to say, hey, this is. It's just a matter of curiosity, which I think sometimes like, we just get too narrowly focused on what we believe is true, and we don't try to dig deeper into what's being told to us. And like that's what I feel a lot about religion, right? Like I see organized religion, as a general guideline for society, how to become a member of society that is, I guess, at the very least, not harmful. But when you take into extremes, of course, but before that, it was just like, hey, this is how we figured out that we don't die. We think this mystical being has been looking out for us because we're following these protocols that someone said was by him or them or whatever. And like, I think looking into these things and looking into the overall message of why it's beneficial as well, like to your environment, how it benefits not just yourself, but the environment around you, and how it benefits you, of course, like with internally. These are all things to look at. One example I look at as well is like alcohol, right? Alcohol is currently known as one of the biggest right? We love drinking it. We've been drinking it for centuries. Like part of humanity was, hey, let's hunt, let's gather, let's make alcohol. like, and part of that though is that people were drinking forever in their lives. They were drinking since they were kids, and for a period of time, alcohol was safer to drink than water.
Yes.
And why? And does that mean that alcohol is healthy? No,
It
but
depends. It depends. If the options are beer or contaminated water, it is healthier.
yeah. So it's, I think at the time grandma would tell you, hey, if the grandma was alive, I've been drinking alcohol my whole life, and while yes, I'm a drunk, I've been living because I haven't gotten diarrhea and dysentery from drinking that dirty water that doesn't have bubbles. So um, yeah, I still think that there's things like that in our today's world we believe is healthy because it's a healthier alternative to what we have, but it's not truly the problem at hand. We're just treating a symptom of the bigger problem. I think
Yeah.
about that with
So like
yeah,
I mean, the main benefit of religion that I see is like it gives you purpose, right?
sure,
Because it's like, oh, so like in the case of Christianity, like I was made in the image of God. He knew me before I was born. Like he created me with intention. I was meant to be here. And so like there's that meaning. And so it fills that need that we need. And like it's not the only place to get it. Like if some people just like are fulfilled by like helping others and just like or being like an educator, and that fulfills their need, like that's my purpose. I want to make other lives better. I want to spread good information. That can also fill that need that religion does for others.
right, no, yeah, and I think that's a very whether it's pseudoscience, whether whatever you want to call it, like that's a powerful thing to have. I mean, and hey, who's to say that religion won't make you healthy? Believe it in that regard, right? You become less stressed, you become calmer, you have more faith.
Yeah,
So you kind of like you
happier.
give up control, yeah, you give up control where you don't have it, right? Oh, it's in God's hands now. I think that's actually a beautiful thing to say sometimes when it's specific to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I think it gives people something to lean on. And whether it's pseudoscience, whether whatever it is, it's very minimum free. And
Well, depends on the religion. Like some religions ask for 10% of your income. That is a little pricey.
yeah, it's a little pricey for sure.
But hey,
Jesus.
what's salvation? Uh, what's it? How much does it mean to you?
Nootropic salvation. it's nootropics and 10% of your income. Who knows? We're all spending our money somewhere. So
Eh,
I'm not gonna. I just think that within pseudoscience, it points to a larger thing, which is being objective about the world around us and admitting both like the knowledge that we have and the knowledge that we don't. So that is my belief in my belief systems. I will never laugh at you for telling me a crazy idea that you have, that you follow, a protocol that you do. Um, as so long as you don't force me to do it, and I'm not really sure how anybody can really force
well,
me to
they
do
can
anything.
try to. That's not very nice.
Yeah, and yeah, so long as I can make my own judgments and protocols for it. So, um, yeah, I think it's overall beneficial in a way.
Yeah, it's respect, right? It's just like you can have your beliefs, and you can have beliefs that wildly differ from mine, and that's okay. You're welcome to have that. Just do I just ask uh, the same in return. Just like respect that I have different beliefs, and like at the end of the day, like to bring it all the way around back to pseudoscience, the main message I wanted to um, put out there for pseudoscience is that like learn as much as you can, learn as much about this specific pseudoscience that you have come across, learn about it as much as you can, reference all the other things you know about the rest of the world, and maybe it's about anatomy or nutrition. Take all of those things you already know and apply it and like use that lens to look at this new piece of pseudoscience, and then make the decision for yourself. Is this appropriate for me? Should I try it? Is this worth trying? Is it worth trying once? Is it not worth trying at all? Like,
Right.
just make the decision for yourself. Think it through.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. And the other part when I say that is don't ridicule anybody.
Yeah.
And try to see the value in the things that are being said to you. It could be, hey, there's some value in hearing about ashwagandha and seeing that Kevin like less stressed. Maybe look into that. Maybe look into what has caused ashwagandha, like how behavioral changes of Kevin has been since ashwagandha. Like I would always say, just try to
Try to what? That whole sentence got cut out.
Wow, I'm sorry. I gotta get a mic. Try to look over what you think the obvious answer is, right? Like even if it is that the main takeaway is the obvious the obvious takeaway, still try to hear people out and listen thoroughly, right? It could be bullshit, but at its worst case scenario, you don't gain anything. At its best case scenario, you learn something.
Yeah. And an added benefit that's been really useful for my own personal life is that when I hear people out, I learn more about that person. Like I gain a deeper understanding for like how their brain works. And perspective is always a good thing, I think.
Perspective is always a good thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's only when you get stuck in your own perspective that you start to get into like arguments such as like, oh, I can't even understand how they think like that. And then now you're just going to start othering them and be like, oh, the people over there, they believe this? I could never. I can't even fathom, And then we get divisiveness.
Yeah. And I think, dude, divisiveness is quite literally the killer of knowledge. Like you will never truly expand. You will never truly learn how to debate. You will never truly learn how to understand other people if you're only surrounded. And I think even if you're an atheist, study religion. I think if you're a religious person, you should study why people believe in atheism. Like, right? If anything, it might strengthen your own beliefs. Otherwise, you might have some, right? Because otherwise, you're gonna be stuck. You're gonna get stuck into an intellectual. You're basically imprisoned, and you're not growing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, pseudoscience. So how do we feel about it now? Do you think it's a positive thing, neutral thing, negative thing? Overall,
the good coexists with the bad, right? There's good neutral. And bad to everything. I would not say it's neutral. I think that there is good and bad, and that's different than neutral. I don't think that things are an average of their quality, because their quality really depends on what you focus on, what you take to heart, right? We're coming up on like 90 minutes, so I wanted to wrap it up with apple cider vinegar, which is pseudoscience, and it's a part of pseudoscience that we haven't actually talked about yet, which is that I think we can both agree on that apple cider vinegar with the mother, that is the bacteria that created the vinegar in the first place from the cider, that bacteria is good for the gut. You would agree?
No.
What? It's probiotic. Well,
probiotics might also be pseudoscience.
Gut health is important, my friend.
I'm not saying that that's but gut health is important. I agree. But also another recent study shows that probiotics and prebiotics don't necessarily change the microbiome in your gut as much as it does, or even at all. So to a significant change.
Here, let me back up to maybe we can find some common ground, which is fiber. Fiber is good for your gut biome, yes?
I agree. Yes.
Cool.
That's there it is.
Cool. So fiber, awesome. So you want to keep your gut biome healthy. Like there's a reason that we have bacteria in our digestive system in the first place. It's because they help us digest things. Like we wouldn't have like had this we wouldn't have developed this what's what I'm looking for? Beneficial symbiosis? What's the word I'm looking at? Is it symbiosis? I don't know. We work together. We give it food and it helps us break down food.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have developed this if it wasn't beneficial for us. So like we should do things to help them out, give them fiber. When I gave myself food poisoning the most recent time and I threw up because I undercooked my chicken, I lost some of my gut biome. That's what that's when you throw up, when you have diarrhea, like you lose a little bit extra. So like I think that replacing a little bit with the apple cider vinegar helps. I guess that is pseudoscience. All right, I guess we weren't as on the same page as I thought we would be, but that's okay. We have different opinions.
Yeah, we do. We have different opinions. I think one thing about this podcast that if I want to continue on forward here, by the way, is that I want to include the studies that I reference.
Yes.
Throughout.
Send me the links. I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, just in case, just so we can at least have some credibility, and then we don't become the ones spreading.
Yes.
Pseudoscience. You know.
Yes, I would love that.
But I agree with what you're saying at the end. There's some commonality, some common grounds that we can find. Yeah.
Yes. Well, okay. Well, this still illustrates my point, which is that like I believe in apple cider vinegar. I have a tablespoon, dilute it with water. I drink it in the afternoons. I think it helps with my gut biome. I think it's got some other things in there. Maybe it helps. You don't think it really does? That's okay.
Hey. I just said, you asked me, do you agree? All right. Oh. And I said no, but really what I mean is I don't know.
Okay. Which is good. Holding off on an opinion, so underrated, right? Why does everyone have to have an opinion on everything? If you don't know something about anything, wait until you learn about it to make an opinion. That's fair. Yeah. Not having an opinion, so underrated. I appreciate you not having an opinion if you don't know much about it. I would be interested about you researching more, trying it, whatever, and then getting back to me. But so like I will have apple cider vinegar myself. I will, if people ask me about it, I'll be like, yeah, I have it. But where people take it too far, right? They take that snippet of like, oh, this could be helpful, and they blow it out of proportion. One of the silliest things to me, so like, I don't really believe in the benefits of apple cider vinegar outside of the probiotic stuff. And even then, you're like, I don't even know if it helps even with that. So like, I don't think that apple cider vinegar helps outside of the probiotic stuff. So when I see things like apple cider gummies, have you seen those?
No.
I think that's so silly because there's no bacteria in that. There's no probiotic.
Apple cider vinegar, like by itself, does not taste good.
Vinegar flavored gummy. Well, they add sugar to it to make it tasty.
Oh, so then, you're helping your microbiome, but then you're.
No, you're not, because there's no biotic in it. But they're like, we added like 3 drops of apple cider vinegar to like this gelatin and 5 grams of sugar to make this little gummy. Like there's probably not even that much apple cider vinegar in there. And even that, it's like, it's so diluted, basically homeopathy. But then on top of that, you're having so much sugar on top of it. How many preservatives and like shelf stabilizers are in that gummy? There is no health benefit to that. Like, and even if there was, it has to be outweighed
there's
by all that
there.
Yeah.
You're not getting one. If anything, you might be getting some positive side effects as well as negative side effects. So the only supplement that I think is like probably solid, and I think you'd agree here. Like, just like I felt amazing with it. I've seen like 3 times this size. Like I feel like I even grew taller. It was a Flintstone sour gummy vitamins.
So multivitamins, or are you specifically saying the Flintstones?
No, the Flintstone sour, like where you take 2 a day. That's it. Those are. Say what you will. I've been taking those since I was a kid. You know, they made me taller.
Well, I mean, you were a kid. Growing is what you do.
No, dude, no.
Not like this.
The Flintstone gummies, you know.
I mean, now that you mention it, I took those as a kid too. I rarely got sick. It was probably the Flintstone gummies.
It was the Flintstone gummies.
Yeah.
I think we should end our podcast here.
Perfect spot.